In this video, we're going over how to install a solar vent on a roof. This is my first time doing this, but you can see the final result. The reason I did it was because you can see here, the temperature in my attic was about 141 degrees. That's where I have my AC. After I installed this vent, you can see that I leveled off to about 106, 110. So there's about a 30 to 35 degree difference installing this solar vent. The first thing you want to do is figure out where you're going to put the vent. For me, I had access to the attic, and what I did was I put a screw right through the roof, and on the other side of the roof I can see where the screw was. I wanted to make sure that that screw is between the two rafters, and then I used the template that was provided to me to cut the hole. If you don't have access to the attic, you can do this right from the roof itself. Just make sure you feel for where the rafters are, and you want to make sure it's in the middle of the rafters. Here I'm making sure that the vent is going to be at least 18 to 24 inches away from the ridge. You don't want to be right next to the ridge. Here you can see the vent. This vent is about 2,000 square feet. And I installed it as close to the middle of my roof as I possibly could. Now I'm going to go ahead and drill a pilot hole first, as you see here, and then I'll use a Sawzall to cut this off. Now I made this circle with the included template, and again I'm making a pilot hole and then cutting it with a Sawzall. All the products that I use are in the description, so all the links to the products are there. And you can see again drilling that pilot hole, and you're going to see my bit fell inside there, but not a big deal. And now I'm going to use the Sawzall to basically go ahead and cut this hole, and this is where the vent is going to go. The vent is going to go on top of this hole. The instructions say this should be 13 inches. I think I ended up getting it closer to 15 inches, but it doesn't really matter because the vent covers the hole. Now one thing I did here is I used this chalk to make this circle. You can use a Sharpie, which is going to be better, and it's going to blend into the roof a little bit better. So you can see I'm using the Sawzall just to go ahead and cut that off. And once I cut that off, you're going to have a huge hole in your roof. And this is the first time I did this. I'll admit, this is kind of like, okay, now I have a hole in my roof. But don't worry, if you follow these instructions, you're going to be just fine. Now you can see my circle here is not exactly the best, but it is what it is. The next thing you do is you want to go ahead and loosen up those shingles. And I'll use the Sawzall to cut any roofing nails. So there's roofing nails there. You're going to have to cut those nails off, because what's going to happen is you're going to go ahead and put that vent underneath the shingles. So you want to make sure that you cut the closest nails to the edge there as you can. And then I'm going to go ahead and just feel them out. And then if I see any nail there, again, I'll use the Sawzall like I'm doing here just to cut those nails, because that vent will be going underneath the shingles. Again, this is the first time I installed a vent on a roof, and this could be a little bit nerve-wracking because you have a hole in your roof. But if you follow these instructions, you'll be fine. And there's a few things that I'm going to point out that I wish I did different. But again, just using the Sawzall to remove those roofing nails, and there's a lot of roofing nails around these shingles. You're going to have to get them out, and that's what I'm doing here. And I'm going to make sure that the shingles are nice and loose, because, as I said, the vent, or part of the vent, is going to go underneath those shingles. Again, you want to make sure all those nails are out of there, because if you have any nail there, you're not going to be able to go ahead and put that vent underneath the shingles. The top part of the vent is going to go underneath the shingles, and then the bottom part is going to go over the shingles. And that's done on purpose, and you can see I'm dry fitting it to see what it looks like. And if I find a nail like I did there, you can see I hit a nail, I'll just use the Sawzall to remove that nail or cut that nail. It's very important that you do this. It's very important that you loosen up the shingles, that you cut those nails. I cannot stress this enough, because you want to make sure that that flange is underneath the shingles. And you can see here I'm cutting some of the shingles and I'm loosening it. It's about halfway down where the hole is, and you're going to see why as I go ahead and put this vent underneath the shingles. You're going to see exactly why I cut that there. So again, I'm just looking to make sure that this vent is going to fit right. And then this is why I cut that part of the shingles there, because now I'm going to go ahead and just push the flange on the vent underneath the shingles, and it's going to go all the way up. So half of the shingles are going to be on top of the flange, and then the flange on the bottom is going to go over the shingles. Very important, because as the water goes down, this is exactly how you want it to be. You can see here, you can get a side view, and this is exactly how you want to install it. You can see half of that vent flange is on top of the shingles, the other half is covered by the shingles. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and remove this vent again, and underneath the vent, all around the vent, we're going to go ahead and put some kind of silicone adhesive. Now, you probably want to use clear adhesive. I didn't have any clear adhesive, so I used some asphalt sealant, but you want to use clear sealant underneath the vent, and then you want to go ahead and push that vent onto the hole so it can make a seal. And you'll see what I'm talking about here in a second. I'm just dry fitting this, making sure the flange is the right way and that I have things the way it should be. So it's important to do your thing and do it right. You can see on this particular vent, they wanted a 13-inch hole. I think I went with a 15-inch hole, but it doesn't really matter because the flange covers it and it's fine. It's all about having that adhesive, that sealant underneath the vent to seal that hole and make sure that water doesn't seep through it. Here we're going to get a perspective from the attic, and it was a very hot day, very hot in here. You can see me sweating, but here's that circular cutout that I cut. And I just wanted to make sure that the vent was sitting correctly on that cutout. Again, the recommendations was for 13 inches. I went about 15, so I should have went a little bit less. But this is where the sealant underneath that lip there is going to help to make that seal and make sure that water doesn't seep through. You can see this is a solar vent. You don't need any kind of plug in anything. It just works. So you got to be careful with that because this thing right now is spinning. So now that I know it's sitting there correctly, you want to go ahead and apply sealant. Here you want to apply a clear sealant, and I will have links in the description. There's a couple of choices that you have here, but I didn't have clear sealant, so I did apply the asphalt sealant, which is the tar sealant. And I really wish I had the clear one. It would have made my job easier, but it is what it is. That's what I have, and that's what I used. Again, I'm going to go ahead and put that vent underneath the shingles now that I have the sealant all around the vent on the bottom. And now you can see why it was important to loosen up those shingles, to remove those nails. And you can see why I cut that shingle right there, because that's the part of the shingle that's going to go over the flange like you see here. So again, I have the sealant. I put it in there. It's covering the hole, and that's exactly what you want. Take your time with it. Again, this was my first time. I was a little bit nervous, but we had significant rainstorms and windstorms after I did this, and I had no issues with water seeping in. So if you do it this way, you're gonna get it done right. Take your time to adjust things, make sure everything is perfect. And this vent helped me tremendously because I had my AC in the attic, my air handler, and the AC was just not working right at 140 degrees. I had all kinds of components on the air handler fail, so I needed this because I didn't have proper ventilation. And here it is. So the next thing to do is to go ahead and put the screws. So it's going to be 3 screws in the front of the flange, and then it recommends that you put another couple of screws in the back. I didn't put the screws in the back. What I did was I want to go ahead and put more sealant on there underneath the flange, and then you're going to see me, I'm going to go ahead and put the 3 screws, and for me this was enough. So 3 screws in the front. It recommends a couple of screws in the back through the shingles, and then on top of the heads of the screws you want to go ahead and put the sealant that we have here, and that will help water from going through the screw holes. And now you can see I'm putting my screws again, 3 screws in the front flange, and then if you want to put 2 in the back, you can. I didn't feel that it was necessary. I only put the ones in the front. As I mentioned earlier, this has withstood a couple of windstorms up to 70 miles an hour, and it has been no issue. And now what I'm doing is I'm going to go ahead and put that sealant all around. And this sealant is especially important on the top part of the flange where the shingles are over the flange. So you want to put sealant underneath the shingles and where the shingle and the vent meet. So you can see on the bottom here, you can see that sealant all around that black tar. And again, I probably would use some clear sealant, didn't have it, but you can see that's what you want. I just wanted to make sure that it was in the middle of the hole and there was sealant all around. And again, this is important because not only is it going to prevent water from coming in through your roof, but it's also going to go ahead and hold that vent down. Here you see I'm using a brush on that sealant just to make sure it's in there between the vent and the shingles. And then the trick is to use some of that sand from the shingles, that loose sand, to blend it in and make it look even better. And again, this is solar, so you don't have to plug in anything. It automatically works, and it has kept my attic very cool. And the air handler, the AC, works a lot better. And this is the finished product. Again, I wish I had a little bit of that clear silicone, and it would have been neater and look a little bit better. But overall, it works. There's no leaks, and I'm happy with it. I hope this video has helped you. If it has, leave a comment, put a like, and we'll see you on the next one.